questions throughout the discussion, and we'll go ahead and verbalize them with our discussion leaders today. You can submit those questions either via the chat function or the Q&A box, and those are both accessible in the menu at the bottom of your screen. You can pull those options up and they'll be accessible on the right side of your Zoom screen. Today's call is recorded and will be available for playback. Instructions to access a copy of the recording as well as a copy of today's presentation deck will be distributed to all attendees in a follow-up email that you should receive no later than tomorrow. For leading, as far as today's discussion, as I mentioned, I have a pair of distinguished discussion leaders from our partners at TriServe Appraisal Management Solutions. First off, I want to introduce Director and SVP of National Accounts, Mark Welster. Hey, Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tom. Hello to all the lenders on the call. Hope you're all staying safe.
Appreciate it, Mark. And then also leading today's discussion from TriServe, we have Chief Appraiser and Chief Operating Officer, Jim Jędrzejewski. Hi, Jim. How are you, sir?
I am fantastic, Tom. Thank you for having us.
Oh, much appreciated. I appreciate you both taking the time out of, I'm sure, your busy schedules to help lead today's discussion and for each collaborative members. So without further ado, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mark to kick things off. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I've just messaged Tony there to go ahead and advance the slide, Tony, and we can get going on this. For all of you out there, we appreciate you taking the time to join here. We know it's a busy day and obviously a busy week. So we've compiled some thoughts and some topics that are really top of mind from feedback we've gotten from lenders, questions we've gotten from various folks around the loan process. And so we're just going to take about 10 minutes or so, go through a very short set of slides with some of this detail, try and get to the end of it as quickly as possible. And then on the Q&A, we really just want to keep as much of the back end open for Q&A because we know a lot of you do have questions. So we'll jump in and go forward. I'd like to introduce Jim Jędrzejewski again, our Chief Appraiser and COO. I'm going to have him take over. And one of the top line topics that we've been fielding from various lenders is what's the difference between today's desktop appraisal and a traditional desktop appraisal, and what should I kind of understand about it in terms of risk, reps and warrants, that sort of thing. So Jim, if you could take it from here.
Thank you, Mark, and good afternoon to everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today. Really to discuss the unprecedented changes that have happened over the past few weeks as it pertains to the appraisal industry and appraisals that are being performed with Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and USDA. I will say this, back when the financial crisis hit, I stated that we would never see anything like that happen in my lifetime again in our industry. And boy, was I wrong. The current crisis has been not only as bad as the financial crisis in terms of our industry, but worse in my opinion. So the one thing that we are prepared for though is change. And that is something that we have all been experiencing at a rapid pace, basically. So really, the topic of the desktop appraisal in our industry has been hotly debated over the past few years. I don't know if most of you know this or not, but Fannie Mae currently does have a pilot program that is in use with some of the larger lenders in the United States. It's a hybrid appraisal reported on a 1004P form. And what they do is they send out a qualified home inspector, and the home inspector sends that information to the appraiser, and the appraiser does perform a desktop appraisal from their house. They don't actually enter the property at all. That program has been ongoing for a few years. The other type of desktop appraisal that we have seen over the past few years as well is not a standardized form with the GSEs. So in other words, it's not approved by Fannie, Freddie, FHA, or any of the entities. And we've seen it mostly for HELOC loans or for portfolio evaluation, but it's certainly not used with a typical Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan that we all deal with on a daily basis. And just to maybe back up a little bit, the reason that these desktop appraisals have been such a hot topic of discussion is the appraisers are unsure if they actually follow the USPAP guidelines, USPAP being the guidelines set forth by the Appraisal Foundation that govern the appraiser population and let them know if they are completing compliant reports. There have also been some state regulatory boards that have frowned on these hybrid desktop appraisals that have been floating around for a couple years, and they've been trying to discount or discredit the desktop appraisal as well. So we rewind a few weeks back, and all of the GSEs, or the GSEs and all the entities, decided it was in the best interest of the United States to move forward with a modified scope of works desktop appraisal. And this in turn created a firestorm of controversy in the appraiser community regarding USPAP and compliance. Thankfully, the Appraisal Foundation issued an FAQ, and what they did to make all of these desktop appraisals that we're currently doing USPAP compliant is they removed a certification on the appraisal, and that particular certification, it was removed to recognize that the appraiser may have relied on information from an interested party to the transaction, i.e. the borrower, the realtor, property contract, etc. And additional verification may not have been possible. That pretty much calmed everyone down, and for the appraisers that were not on board, that opened up a large portion of the panel that said, you know what, if the Appraisal Foundation is on board, we are now on board as well. Does that mean that every appraiser that is out there is going to move forward with a desktop appraisal? Absolutely not. There are appraisers out there that simply will not pivot to a desktop. They may do the exterior, but they're just weary of a desktop appraisal moving forward. So here we are, the appraisal community. We're plowing ahead with this modified scope of work that was just created a few weeks ago. And the scope of work is a minimum scope of work, meaning the appraiser can complete the report, no interior inspection, no exterior inspection, but that doesn't preclude the appraiser from driving to the subject property to make sure there's not a water tower in the backyard. It does not mean that they will not drive to the comparables to verify the same. In fact, the majority of the appraisers that we've been in contact with lately are doing exactly that. They want to personally view the subject from the street. They want to view the comparables from the street to look for that external obsolescence that may be present. And they also just want to look at the general feel of the neighborhood itself and the homes that surround the subject property. To be honest, in my opinion, it's a good course of action to take for the field appraiser. The other option.
This is Mark. Can you also just real quickly speak to the reps and warrants piece of a desktop versus a 2055?
You bet. We were going to get there. So it is my understanding that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are really pushing towards the desktop appraisal over the exterior appraisal. The main reason being is that the collateral underwriter piece, or the UCDP, scores a 1004, 1073 appraisal form better than an exterior product, the 2055, the 1075. And therefore they have come out and said, I believe it is, if it scores a 2.5 or less on the SSR, then the reps and warrants on valuation remain intact, which obviously for all the lenders out there, that's exactly what you're looking for. So us at TriServe, we're trying to, as far as the cascade process goes, okay, we can't do a full interior inspection, and that is becoming more and more common these days. We are pushing for a desktop appraisal wherever possible. Are we always going to get there? No, we're not. But that has been that's been our process and our protocol and procedure since this started.
And I also want to point out for those of you following on the slides, we did pop a quick update that hit on April 8th with the Fannie Mae guidance. Some people were asking about this. Skype and FaceTime, could it be used to augment interior inspections on conventional mortgages? The answer is no, but you can use that, or an appraiser could use some of those assets to augment an exterior drive-by product if they would like. Tony, can you advance the slide, please? One. All right, and real quick, we wanted to get to as well, Jim and I will discuss briefly how the different agencies are treating the various forms for exterior appraisals. Most of you are probably aware of how the GSEs are doing it, and we'll just contrast them with HUD and with FHLB real quick. Jim, you want to jump in on this first part?
Absolutely. So the good news on the desktop forms, they are going to be a mirror image of what we currently see every day. Standard 1004, 1073, 1025, co-op form 2090, and manufactured home 1004C. The only difference is that modified scope of work that the appraiser is required to include into the appraisal, and also under the map reference field on the appraisal, which is page 1, they have to include the word desktop in that particular field. And that just gives Fannie Mae, your underwriters, the users of the report, the ability to understand, okay, was this a modified scope of work or was this a true full appraisal? Just basically assists in reviewing the appraisal. The drive-by forms are used when a desktop is unavailable or unworkable. And this would be the 2055 for a single family, the 1075 for a condo. Now, the interesting part on the drive-bys or exterior only is the multifamily product, the co-op product, the manufactured home product. They've never had a drive-by form that was acceptable for Fannie Freddie. So in those instances, the appraiser is to continue to use the standard interior form 1025, 1004C, or 1004C, and they just need to put the modified scope of work to state this was a drive-by only appraisal.
One other thing that I also want to add here as well on this particular subject, because it's a real-time thing and things do change. we have heard from a couple of lenders today who've stated they've seen messages in their LOS systems or in other places that are basically asking or recommending they potentially use a desk review or Form 2006 appraisal product. I had that come up with a lender this morning I was talking to when they were trying to place their orders. Just want to stress that is not what we're talking about here, and that's not something that is in the current guidelines to use a Form 2006 desk review for any of this stuff. Go ahead, Jim, sorry.
Yep, for the GSEs, they're not allowing any desktop appraisals on a refi. This is only applicable for purchase money transactions. And the Mark, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying earlier as far as the acceptable forms, there's also, we've been getting a little bit of some comments from the lenders that are stating, hey, we want a desktop exterior form. There is no desktop exterior form. So it's all in the wording, it's all in the vernacular and the verbiage that that we're receiving. And when we see those situations, we're trying to latch on and make sure that everyone's on the same page, because like Mark said, the changes are coming fast and furious. And I'm sure by the time we get off of this conference call, there will probably be one that was just sent from Fannie and Freddie, right? So
Exactly.
as far as FHA and HUD, they do mirror Fannie and Freddie as far as the desktop appraisals, except they do not allow the 2055, 1075 exterior drive-bys. What is more interesting is the Federal Home Loan Bank acceptable forms. As far as refis are concerned, they do allow a desktop appraisal, unless it's a cash out. Cash out is still going to require a full interior inspection, and that particular portion is a little bit confusing. But after a few weeks of this, I'm almost positive we have this together, right, Mark? Actually, I'm very positive.
We're getting there for sure.
It's ever changing.
And I'll reiterate one last thing before we move on to the feedback from appraisers on best practices for smooth inspections. Obviously, get with your teams and your management to define how you're going to roll some of these things out. Our understanding in reviewing all three of these guidances from the various alphabet soup agencies is that you have to go out and actually attempt to do a full appraisal with interior inspection before you pivot to a desktop or an exterior product. And part of that is also identifying that it's a COVID-related risk. The reality is, and Jim and I were discussing this earlier with a couple of other lenders, if there's someone in the house that has a fever or is sick in any way, most likely the appraiser is probably not going in, COVID related or not. So you probably have grounds to go ahead and pivot where you can to the exteriors from that side. Okay. Moving on to feedback from appraiser best practices. We do obviously talk to a lot of appraisers. Last month we did almost 13,000 appraisals. Before that, we've been averaging basically over 10 for the last quarter per month. So we do this in all 50 states. And having done that, as you can imagine, we do get a lot of feedback from appraisers on what works, what's not working, what they'd like to see. So we wanted to just put that into a slide and share with you some of the best practices we've been seeing and hearing to help you with your inspections going smoothly and to maybe work with appraisers a little bit better to allay some of their concerns. Keep in mind the average age of appraisers is in the high 50s. Many of them are already in the target risk age for COVID-19. And so that's going to increase the percentages of appraisers, especially in hard hit areas that are only going to do exterior inspections. So plan for some delays up front and communicate with your teams on those dynamics in your area. I'll give you a recent example. If you're familiar with the Bay Area, San Francisco, there's a northern town there called Vallejo, which is in the North Bay area, right across from one of the bridges. There's like 3 or 4 appraisers who basically live in Vallejo. They are all in the COVID age group. Every single one of them that we've talked to is continuing to do conventional work where they can, but they're all doing exterior inspections because they're pretty much all in that target group. So to do any interior inspections, we've had to bring in appraisers from outside of Vallejo, sometimes crossing the bridge from the South Bay area or the San Francisco area or even the Marin area to come in and do that. So kind of be aware of that, work with your AMC partners, work with your appraisers, and sort of understand where some of those pressure areas are as we go into it. Tony, you can go ahead and advance. Let's share these 5. And then this will wrap us up and get us onto the resources and then your Q&A. So first off, here's the high level. Number one, inform borrowers and agents to maintain social distancing. This one's common sense, but a couple of practical ones. If they're comfortable with it, they can either exit the property completely, let the appraiser go through, or you can even inform them you'll isolate in one part of the house and to allow them to go through. That's usually something that you and your borrower and the appraiser will work out, but it's something that most appraisers are asking for. So just inform your borrowers of that and see what they're comfortable with as the inspection gets scheduled. The second one that's kind of a hot topic is physical protection. We have seen more and more of this, where appraisers are obviously bringing their own gloves, face masks, but it's also a practice we've seen in some areas to offer new and unused, I want to stress that, new and unused booties, gloves, and even face masks for appraisers if you have them, just to make them feel comfortable. Bear in mind that some appraisers might refuse these items just because if they didn't bring it, they don't want to touch it. But it doesn't hurt to have it if it's at all possible. Otherwise, just follow the appraiser's instructions, and basically that leaves us sort of the next thing. What can you do to make it easier for the appraiser when they walk through? Well, the first one is turn on appliances that might need to be verified to function, especially with HUD or FHA deals. You're talking about, for example, the dishwasher needs to be verified that it works. The ovens, the microwaves, things like that. To the extent that you can, turn on those appliances. For example, a dishwasher does have a quick rinse cycle. You could start that, have it run for 10 minutes while the appraiser gets in the house, so they can just quickly verify that stuff without having to touch it. There's obviously some items in the house that you just can't do that with. Like, nobody expects you to turn on your garbage disposal and leave it running as you walk out the door for the appraiser to walk in. So some of that, will have to be done by the appraiser. But if you can minimize the touch points, maybe your washer, dryer, those things can be run on quick rinses cycles as well, just so they know it's working and they don't have to touch anything. That's certainly a help, and it can speed up the inspection. Secondly, just like with what real estate agents are doing with anybody who's coming in doing tours, turn on all lights, open doors, open crawl spaces, have it accessible so appraisers can clearly see and take photos if they need to without having to touch anything, turn on lights, figure out if something's working or not. That's just a good best practice to notify your borrowers and your homeowners of what to do. Finally, that last one is someone in the house sick. We've actually had some experiences with this where someone was sick, nobody told them, the appraiser shows up, finds that out, and refuses to go in or won't go in. So I would say don't hide that from the appraiser. Inform them and tell them whether it's a common illness, if it's COVID related, if it's just allergies and someone is sneezing, maybe that can be worked out. If, like I said, someone has a fever or there's actually a COVID issue, the appraiser likely will not enter the property, and then you either work out a plan for inspection to isolate that sick person with the appraiser, or you contact the lender for a next step or alternative and pivot over to a drive-by. And then finally, just to give you a few updates from state and government entities, we're going to be feeding this information on our website in our resources page, which we'll show on the next slide for you as they update. But I want to give you one recent one. For example, the state of Pennsylvania issued an order on April 8th that actually overrides CISA guidelines on interior inspections. So basically, it eliminates interior inspections as far as we can see for all types of loans in Pennsylvania that were originated basically after March 18th. So this rule basically limits us to doing exterior inspections only in the state of Pennsylvania unless and until they modify that rule. That's obviously going to make it difficult to do, for example, purchases and even cash out refis, especially if you're on a conventional loan. And so, we use our website to get resources on these as they come into play. I will share with you a couple of the conversations I've had with some of our lenders in Pennsylvania that they are basically putting some of those purchases on hold, or basically putting the loan on hold until they can get additional guidance or something changes. So just sort of be aware that these state orders may come in and override some of what we've talked about from a federal level. So far, the state of Pennsylvania is probably the most obvious and in-your-face one. There may be others, and maybe this order gets rescinded. When it does, we'll post that on our site. Jim also mentioned earlier things like the map reference field, stating the word desktop. New construction appraisals must have bedroom photos supplied by the builder. There is, if you have not seen it, an FAQ update from Fannie Mae that was released on April 8th. It actually clarifies and issues updates for a variety of these topics. Highly recommend that you go and view that. We'll have a link to it as well on our site, but you can certainly find it with a quick Google search or going on to Fannie Mae's site. And again, expect that to be updated probably weekly at this point. Jim, I think both of us have seen enough change in 3 weeks to last us probably for 3 years.
I'm good, brother.
That having said, let's hit the last slide, and then we'll get to your questions. I do see there's been a couple that have popped in as we've gone here. So first, use our resource pages to keep track of the updates. There's our information below if you want to email me or Jim, or give me a call, and I'd be happy to talk with you about anything specific that's hitting you. That website up there, triservllc.com, is our site /appraiser continuity. This is basically free content, and it will be detailed content, and we will be updating it fairly frequently. So you can go there and you can look for updates both in the regulatory aspect as well as appraiser practices and what they're doing or not doing vis-a-vis certain requirements. So with that, Tom, I'll pull back and give it back over to you and let you run the Q&A.
All right, apologize about that quick delay there. Got briefly, Mark, Jim, thank you so much for first off for going through all this content. Extremely.
Tom, if you might have cut out there for a minute, but that's okay.
Just TriServe's appraiser continuity indicates we're going to be featuring the newest content being updated there in our weekly collaborative updates as well too. So always be on the lookout for that. In answering some of the questions that have come in so far, I first want to remind our attendees, feel free to filter those questions that you have for Jim or Mark in via the chat or Q&A function. So we've got about 15 minutes to go.
Sorry, Tom, you're
come through, and just a reminder, copy of the deck and recording will be distributed to attendees in a follow-up. Jim, Mark, I don't know if you guys want to take this first. I saw the one question in the Q&A asking if seen anything in writing. I'm assuming that's related to whether the GSE updates or any other industry guidance requesting that must attempt a full appraisal inspection first.
Yeah, and to read the question for everyone attending, do we have that in writing that we must attempt a full appraisal first? Jim, if you'd like to give your answer to that, I can supplement it.
Yes. So the GSEs are 100% certain that a full appraisal must be ordered first, and then it can cascade from there. What the concern is from Fannie and Freddie is they just do not want lenders to say, hey, we're going to just hit it with a desktop immediately or order the 2055. They want to make all possible attempts to get the appraiser into the property for an inspection.
And to piggyback on that as well, that is the same guidance from HUD and from the FHLB. If you read through, on the first page, is what they're actually saying is an interior inspection should be attempted before you pivot these products.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jim. Another question I had here, if a loan is eligible for 2055 or a drive-by appraisal, can you go ahead and order that right out of the gate?
No, that would not be eligible. It has to, you have to start with a full appraisal order and then it can cascade from there.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Jim, another question your way here. Several situations where in multifamily property, one of the tenants maybe is advanced in age or medically compromised due to reasons. Does the appraiser have to inspect every aspect of the property in that scenario?
That is a fantastic question, Tom. And we have run into this situation multiple times over the past few weeks. And primarily it does come with the multifamily properties, the duplex, triplex, quadplex. And the answer to answer your question, the appraiser needs to inspect the entire property. So even if it is just a bedroom and a bathroom in one of the units that an older tenant may be staying in and has COVID-19 concerns, it's still going to have to be inspected. There's no way around it. We've had plenty of comments or questions. Hey, can the appraiser just not inspect the bedroom and bathroom and put a comment in there? Well, they can do that, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that Fannie and Freddie are not going to, they're not going to go for that. They're not going to buy the loan. And it would definitely need to be inspected.
Gotcha. Appreciate that insight. Before posing additional questions, just a reminder to the attendees again, feel free to continue to filter in your questions for Jim and Mark via the Q&A windows and chat functions, and we'll go ahead and facilitate those inquiries directly to our discussion leaders today. I think it's kind of piggybacking off the last question, Jim. What if it's just a general illness or concern? Can that qualify as a COVID concern?
I mean, Tom, if you don't know that it is COVID-19, but in other words, if you have a fever, if the borrower has a fever or any symptoms that could be related to COVID-19, that, in my opinion, is absolutely a concern. And if applicable, you could cascade to a desktop or an exterior only product. I guess to me, the bottom line, as far as the whole appraisal relief effort that Fannie Mae came out with, initially, we had a lot of comments that that really focused around turn times. A lot of people thought that, hey, great, this appraisal relief is going to, this is for turn times because turn times are horrible right now, right? Well, they're maybe not horrible, but they're extended in some parts of the country. Yes, they are horrible. But it's, the appraisal relief effort has absolutely nothing to do with shortening the time frame to get the appraisal. The only solution for that is less volume. They're concerned about the public health, the public safety, the appraiser safety. And so, yes, if there is any sort of illness going on, I think you just go ahead and pivot directly to the cascading products, if at all possible.
Sounds like the general rule of thumb is, try to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And, kind of, I guess, a question from my perspective here. Does TriServe have I guess communication best practices or, any sort of FAQs to share with the borrower or in conjunction with the lender when looking to, set up the inspection or provide, kind of help set the expectation for the borrower pre-inspection so that, there's no, delays or unexpected, I guess, scenarios on site where it can be avoided?
We communicate with the appraiser on protocol as far as what's expected of them, what they need to communicate to the borrower. And every appraiser that we are utilizing on an interior inspection is going down a checklist of You know, has anyone been sick? Is anyone currently sick? As far as the inspection itself, yes, very helpful to open all the doors, as Mark relayed in the webinar earlier, and just the protocol of the inspection, relaying it from the appraiser to the borrower, just so they understand what exactly is going to happen.
Gotcha. Appreciate that, Jim. And just a last call reminder to our attendees, if you have any questions or inquiries that haven't been addressed yet, please feel free to submit those via the chat and Q&A function, and we'll get those over to both Jim and Mark here. While waiting for any last round of questions to come in, Jim, Mark, I wanted to briefly turn it back over to you in case there were any final remarks that you wanted to share with our attendees today.
Yeah, there's one that I have, real world. Seen it several times the last couple of weeks. For those of you who are doing 1025 multifamily or multi-units, we have seen situations where an appraiser shows up. Let's say there's 4 units. They go inspect unit 1, they inspect unit 2, and they knock on the door of unit 3, and the person says, I can't let you in, or I'm sick, or whatever. Now the appraiser can't walk in and finish that. How does that impact the performance or the completion of that multifamily property? Jim, could you just address that too real quick?
Sure. And yep, that was one of the questions. And essentially, the appraiser would have to go back to the property. They do have to inspect the entire property. It can't be 75% of it. It can't be 90% of it. It has to be 100% interior inspection.
Yep. And then from my end as well, I'll also just share with the lenders on the call. There have been situations where we have had, I just had a situation in San Diego at the end of last week where the borrower literally said, I've got the 2 sickest kids in the world. We purify the air. We barely go out. We don't take them, you know, practically anywhere because they'll just get sick. Can the appraiser do an interior or an exterior inspection? And this was a conventional cash out refinance. And the appraiser was trying to be super accommodating, offered to wear gloves, offered to wear masks, even offered to wear booties, or just, you know, would they just step out for 5 minutes so he could get in and inspect? They refused to do that. When that occurred, we exhausted every last piece that we could do. But in the end, the homeowners were the ones putting the hand up and saying, no, we'll not let the appraiser in. In that particular case, the lender just had to sort of put it on hold and give it up for the time being. There's just no way in the current guidance to get around that for that particular loan type. So if the borrower will not let them in and it requires an interior inspection, that's something that you will have to put on hold until further notice.
Gentlemen,
so Tom, those are the real world scenarios that we had. So.
So appreciate viewing through those for us. I'm sure plenty of more real world scenarios will come up over the coming weeks as we adapt. And one last question comes through, and I'll kind of read it off for the audience, as I imagine you guys are seeing it on your end as well. It reads as follows. We're adding the following to our appraisal orders. Do you think this covers the fact that we are attempting an internal first? Special instructions, an interior, exterior, 10 or 4 is preferred. However, if you or the owners are not able to facilitate an interior inspection request, the order will be converted to a desktop appraisal or 2055 drive-by. No need to confirm with us which report you will be able to fulfill, just if you're willing to accept our request or not. And just reiterating your perspective, if you think this covers the, I guess, best effort attempt for a internal inspection first.
Yep. So I'll start by saying the answer for us as an AMC would probably be a yes. The reason why is because that order in the language that was just framed by the person commenting, thank you for the question, would be that That is instructions for us. So if we engage an appraiser and they're unwilling to, or there's some issue for the interior inspection that's going to block it, but they've already told us, go ahead and pivot, we're okay with you doing so, then we can do that as an AMC. Still up to the appraiser to decide if they want to go or not. Or maybe we have to get a new appraiser, but we can at least do that internally and manage it.
Mark, I concur with that answer. In fact, we have leaders that work with that have similar comments. And to me, it's totally acceptable.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate the responses. Putting you on the spot here. I don't have any additional questions coming in through the Q&A or chat function at this time, so we'll go ahead and put a wrap on today's discussion. I want to remind our attendees to continue to view our TNC Connect page as we'll continue to update our schedule of upcoming discussions, just like today's. And, resources within our network to put together, like today's, centered around the most pressing topics that are impacting your operation. Lastly, I really want to take time out again to thank both Mark and Jim for sharing their valuable insights today, and for each of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to listen in. Definitely lost on us how frantically busy everyone is right now, so really appreciate you spending that time with us. So on that note, hope you all hopers and stay healthy, and really appreciate the time today.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.